Welcome back to a new set of videos for Shitty Gaming. So this time I'm going to take a look at a couple systems, and I think I'm going to do a couple games that are considered pretty bad and kind of go over them, some typical format, talk about how I feel about them, my history with them, and then kind of look at the gameplay. So with this first episode, I am going to incite a bit of controversy because our first topic on Shitty Gaming is the Sega Dreamcast. What, you may say? The Dreamcast is not a shitty console. Why are you even talking about it? Well, the reason is simple. By all respects, I think it should be considered a shitty console. I mean, let's think about it. It came in third in its generation in sales. It tried to do a whole lot of new technology that maybe we weren't just quite ready for, with the built-in modem and everything here. And stuff like that. I was going to take it out, but it feels like it's pretty well stuck in there. See? Had a built-in modem, so there could be online play, although there really wasn't, it wasn't really set up for it because it's kind of like, the old Sega Net and stuff they had in the Genesis days. And, it kind of had a company behind it that was on its last legs and didn't have the money to support it, really. And it was just like their last gasp. And when it came out, everybody was waiting on the PlayStation 2. And so nobody bought the Dreamcast because Sega had burned so many bridges before that. So, I mean, when you stop and think about it, it is kind of meeting a lot of those qualities. I mean, like the 3DO when it came out, just to kind of compare with one of my favorites, brought a lot of new technology to the table because when it was new, it was very expensive. CD drives were expensive. That, solid state memory in the console was expensive and all that stuff. So it brought in a lot of new technology to the table when it came out too, and it was, arguably ahead of the competition with the Super Nintendo and the Genesis and stuff like that. So the Dreamcast comes out, Microsoft even wrote some little version of portable Windows to go on it, which, I don't know if it'll show up, but it says right there, compatible with Microsoft Windows CE. Well, the reason it's compatible is because it runs Windows. This is actually the Xbox 0.5 in my opinion, but that's a whole other story. So yeah, I mean, the 3DO brought a lot of new stuff to market and it was expensive as a result. The Dreamcast brings that built-in online play, a lot of things. Also, this Windows built into it so it could be more compatible or maybe easier to port PC style games over to it. And it just, everybody was like, meh. Sorry, if it hadn't come out after the 32X Sega CD and the Saturn, maybe if it would have had a chance. Like if Sega would have done the Genesis, sold the Genesis until nobody gave a shit anymore, and then came out with the Dreamcast like 10 years later, they may still be around today, but there was just so much bad will, and everything going on that it just wasn't there. So, it's kind of part of my philosophy with this series that the shitty systems and consoles that get pooped on and all that stuff all this time, there's really nothing wrong with the hardware. It's really just developer support. Did anybody ever want to bother trying to figure out how to run, make games for the thing, that sort of thing. So, I mean, the Dreamcast, it's, really part of its charm. And I love the Dreamcast, I'm just trying to make a point here is one, it had Sega behind it, which at the time was a nostalgia company because even though they screwed over their customers with the 32X and all that stuff and just made a lot of bad decisions, they had a lot of fond memories for people. So the Sega name by itself carries a lot of nostalgia. So the Dreamcast has that built-in mass nostalgia. You know what I mean? Where the 3DO came out on its own and went out on its own, and nobody really kind of if you didn't get one at the time or you just didn't get it, you didn't care. Where this had that nostalgia built in, and then Sega, they tried their damnedest. They put out some good games for it. They had some developer support, so there are some really good, really great Dreamcast games, and so that helps it. But hardware wise, you could say it's on the shittier end of the spectrum because it really didn't perform at all when it was out. So, which is kind of telling because when I'm recording this, which is June of 2016, the Wii U is just getting to the end of its life. Its replacement's on its way out. Be out probably, next March, I believe, March 2017. And they're talking about what a failure it is, and it just passed the Dreamcast in sales. So if the Wii U is a horrible failure, and it just passed the Dreamcast in sales, see what I'm saying? The Dreamcast then technically, on some level, was a horrible failure, right? But it's not regarded that way. It's regarded as a well-loved system that everybody should own 3 of, and they should have all the games, which is well deserved. I'm not going to shit on the Dreamcast itself. It's a great system, but I just wanted to point it out because sometimes what we think of shitty games and what are may be 2 different things. Because the Jaguar, sure, it may have issues, and it may have a library of 80 games, and 40 of them kind of suck, but if there's a good set of games in there, it's a good system to have if you like those games. So that's kind of the whole point to the series. So, but anyway, I just kind of wanted to talk about that. So let's talk about the Dreamcast itself. I mean, it's a very compact system, and it is remarkably heavy for its size. Now I'll let you know, like back in the day, okay, and I've said on previous videos that the worse a system does, for whatever reason, seems to be the more I like it. So, I had like the NES, I had the Super NES. When I was a kid, actually, I don't remember ever really getting a Genesis. I think I got a Genesis later on. But, the very famous Craig, who had everything, I got to learn about the Sega CD, 32X, stuff like that. So I ended up picking those up later, but I wasn't really into them in their prime, And then I got huge into the Saturn. Like, oh my goodness, I could care less about that PlayStation. It didn't even interest me. I had friends, all my friends had it. Could care less about the PlayStation. Just didn't interest me at all. I eventually got one because, you got to go where the games are, and if you like the RPGs and stuff, at some point you just got to bite the bullet and go with that system you're not really big on, but, So I ended up getting one and stuff, but I just couldn't care less. I was all about the Saturn. And I was very happy with it, and then eventually it kind of just pittered out, like, And so then this was on the horizon coming out, and I was pretty excited. I mean, I can't explain how jacked I was to get this system. I mean, it was like crazy. I remember going out, again, it might have been with Craig, I can't remember, but I remember going to St. Louis and one of the local game stores, and there was a Dreamcast there. Now, this was 6 months. Yeah, I think like 6 months before the release. And I remember they had a Dreamcast. They had Japanese imports. They were selling import systems and games at that shop. And I was like, huh. So I was so sold on that system that I bought an import system and a couple games. I want to say like I spent like $500, I swear. And I got this console, and I got, what did I get? Like Marvel vs. Capcom and a stall or something like that. I can't remember what the other one is. Took it home and, was playing these games. They were all in Japanese, but I didn't care. It was like awesome. I was very happy and excited and stuff like that. And so eventually, I remember, there's another part to the story. So I had this Japanese Dreamcast and a couple games, and I'm playing it. It's like, okay. So it's finally getting close to the time for the Dreamcast to do its North American release, right? So I remember going to like a Hollywood Video, like a video rental place, and they actually had a Dreamcast section in at the time. So I'm over there looking. Now it's before the system's release, but they had American games sitting out on the shelf. And I'm like, okay, well that's really cool. So I grabbed like Sonic, and I want to say something else, and I went up to rent them. So I go up to rent the games, and the guy, or the person at the counter, I think it was like the manager or something, I can't remember. He was like, well, this is for the Dreamcast. I'm like, I know. It's like, it's not out yet. I'm like, I know. Well, how are you going to play it? And I'm like, you know, I was like, well, I got an import system. I want to see if I can get it to run or something like that. And he's like, oh, okay. And it was just kind of really weird. He was just giving me this weird look. And then eventually he said he can't rent them because it was before the release date or something like that. Like, I'm like, okay, well, if the release date's a few weeks from now, why are they on the shelf? You know, it's like, I never understood that about businesses. Well, we're going to put this out on the shelf, but we won't sell it to you for 2 weeks. So I missed out on that. So eventually the US release came, and then I think I bought a couple games. And I never could get them to work in the Japanese system because I guess you had to do like a disk swap, and it never worked for me. So I was like, okay. So eventually, I bought an American version. So, you know, here you go with the Dreamcast now. I spent like $500 on an import for two or couple games, and then 6 months later or whatever it was, I'm buying an American version for like the $300 it was or whatever when it came out, plus a launch game or two for it. So there you go. Within like a year, I was out almost $1,000 on the Dreamcast. That's how much I was excited for this system. I mean, it's an amazing system. It's super fun to play. I find the controller to be very comfortable. I wish I had 2 thumbsticks, but you know, otherwise it was great. And yeah, so I mean, it was crazy. And then eventually, I went to play one of the import games one day, and that Japanese Dreamcast died. The laser quit working. So I was like, ah. so luckily I had the American version and kind of just kept up with it. Eventually got rid of the Japanese version, but I still have a game or two over there, the Japanese games. I think I've got them both over there still. But yeah, it was crazy. But it's a fun system. I love it. Everybody should definitely give it a try. But we'll move on. We'll get out to our 2 or 3 games to take a look at and talk about. And thanks for watching. Alright guys, so the first game we're going to look at on the Dreamcast here is Soul Calibur. This is the sequel to Soul Blade, which was a PS1 game, and it's a really, really good fighter. Soul Blade was probably one of my top fighting games ever. Soul Calibur is going to be way up there. In fact, the whole Soul Calibur series would probably be high up there anyway. Now, with Soul Calibur, I remember the character I used to play the most was Sung Mina, which you see up there fighting. She's using the bladed polearm. Had a lot of fun with Soul Calibur back in the day. I remember me and a friend used to play this game all the time. She would play as Killick, which is the guy who fights with the bow staff, and I would fight with Sung Mina, who had the bladed polearm, which for right now the name just escapes me. But yeah, we had lots of fun with it. Battled for hours and hours. Just had a blast with it. This is probably my most played Dreamcast game. If you're going to get into the Dreamcast, or you've already got a Dreamcast and you don't have this game, you have to get it. It's just amazing. Holds up still great today. Super fast. It's kind of got like a 3D gimmick in it where you fight on like a plane, you know, like a 2D fighter, but then you can go in or out and kind of circle your opponent. So it adds quite a bit of a strategy to it. You would be kind of surprised. Now, if I remember right, Soul Blade had a mechanic in it where like if you blocked too much, your weapon would break, but they took that out for Soul Calibur. But yeah, it's definitely probably if you were only going to get one game for the Dreamcast, this would probably be my pick, because I have to admit it's been nothing but tons of fun. So, thanks, and we'll pick up with the next game here. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at Sonic Adventure, which was a launch title for the Dreamcast. It was a pretty cool game. I remember beating this one in the sequel. Kind of talky up front. I hadn't played it in years, so coming in here I didn't realize how talky it was up front, so I wanted to show you some of the intro scene and then a little bit of the first level. Pretty good game. I wouldn't say it was like, you know, one of the top best games on the system. I mean, once you actually get into a level, it's really fun and stuff, but the issue is this is like Sonic's really first 3D game, so there's like a city hub world that you have to walk around in forever, and then you finally get into a level, and then you get to play the level, and then there's like a talkie hub system, and back and forth, and go here talk to this person, and blah blah blah. And that's the only real knock on the game, though, is that there's just not enough gameplay. It just takes forever to get between scenes and what you want to do and everything. It took me a while to remember how to control everything, because I hadn't played in a while, and it's, you know, if you play a lot of modern games, it's hard to go back to a controller with only one stick on it. It just kind of throws you off a little bit. But, I mean, it plays very fast, it never stutters, it never has any real issues. It's a well-made game and everything. It's just, I kind of wish it would have focused more on the actual levels as opposed to the hub worlds, you know. So we're cutting in pretty much to the beginning of the first level here. I skipped a bunch of hub world and just boring stuff here to show you the good parts. And, you know, it's pretty decent. It moves really fast, which was really impressive for a 3D game of the time. And it's one of those games where you know, can go back and have fun. It takes a while to kind of get your fine motor control back on it, because it's just really fast, which of course is, you know, the hallmark of the Sonic series. Lots of fun stuff here. Of course, you get chased by a giant, like, orca whale too, which is always awesome. Probably my favorite part of the scene, when you're running and that thing just starts coming after you. Which we'll get, I believe, we'll get to here. If not, definitely, I mean, it's definitely a good game. You should have it in your collection. It's just, you know, I could think of better, if you could only get a few games, I could think of better games I would get ahead of this one, just due to the amount of time that you don't get to play the levels because of all the talking and whatnot.
Jump as soon as you land on a panel, or else you'll fall.
Yeah, you can really tell it's one of those games you kind of have to practice after remember how to be good at it. Alright, we found Tails. Alright, so the last game we're going to look at here is just a guilty pleasure, and that's Crazy Taxi. I have 1 and 2, they both came out on the Dreamcast, and they are pretty much arcade driving games. The objective is, of course, to pick up a passenger and get them to their destination as quickly as possible. And then, of course, you get extra points if you drive like a maniac, and if you almost hit other cars, and do wild jumps and stuff like that, they'll tip you. And then your goal, of course, is to get as far as you can with as much money as you can. And, of course, I mean, it is an arcade game, so it's really shallow gameplay, and the soundtrack's a little repetitive. But all in all, just a really, really fun game. I remember playing this quite a bit. It's got some different modes, and part 2 has like some different things you can do, like stunts where you've got to jump the car so far, and you know, like go bowling with your taxi and stuff like that. So definitely a fun game. If you were going to get only one of the 2 Crazy Taxis. I would definitely recommend Crazy Taxi 2, just because it adds in some of those other options, and stuff like that. But they're both really cool. There's a lot of secrets and hidden objectives and stuff. Like, this is a coastal town, and out in the ocean, there's actually pedestrians you can pick up as for fares. So if you drive down on the beach, you can drive into the water and stop and pick people up and try and get them to their destination. So a lot of fun stuff. I mean, I don't think I ever saw it in the arcade, actually, and I'm pretty sure they were both arcade games. Would have been interesting to see them. I assume it had a wheel setup, but I don't know. But if it didn't go out in the arcades, it could have. This is like a really good arcade game, and it's another one of those with real kind of responsive, almost twitchy controls where you really have to play for a while to kind of get your bearings and get good at it.